Snow. Yeah, had to say it. Snow's coming. But so are some solar storms. So we're going to talk about all of that right now. The time is 8:12 p.m. and it is November the 4th, if you wanted to know. Welcome to another update from Great Lakes Weather. And again, we usually only roll out these videos when something interesting is happening. And right now, what we're looking at is the potential for the first snow, and then also for the potential for a couple solar storms over the next couple weeks. So we're going to talk about kind of what's happening space weather-wise and weather-wise in this video. To begin, we're going to talk about what has happened today. Currently on the sun, what we have in the east limb of the sun. The east limb is actually this portion of the sun right here. So on the east limb of the sun, we have a few active sunspot regions, okay? And these sunspot regions can orient themselves in such a way to where they become more active and they produce things such as solar flares, and then what are our aurora producers, or CMEs, or coronal mass ejections, off the sun. We have had two major solar flares on the east limb of the sun as of today. This one is the more notable one because it was closer to the Earth-directed region of the sun, which again, it's not in that region yet. We might see a glancing blow, which usually is just a little piece of the coronal mass ejection resulting from the solar flare impacting Earth. But as of right now, we are watching these regions rotate into the Earth strike zone. So seeing this activity already this early can gauge some interest with regards to what's to come a little bit later. So we had our first solar flare, an X-class 1.8 solar flare. Now the solar flares are not what produce the CMEs, but they do provide a chance at CME production. So when we see those flares, we typically watch some of the graphs, some of the pictures and images that come from it, and then we start to see if there's anything erupting from that region. And sure enough, there was some CME activity from these major flares that did occur. And again, likely just going to glance Earth at this point. And again, they do have an effect also on some of our radio frequencies, on some of the power grids across the Earth, but nothing too significant with these kinds of solar flares, and likely not going to see anything that significant from this. We can handle those pretty well with our technology that we have today. But in this case, here is a website that is good to look at with regards to latest updates, regards to auroral activity, spaceweatherlive.com. And again, what we're going to be watching for a while is future solar activity that comes from this. So you can see these sunspot regions here on this graph. And I would go into a breakdown of how all this is explained, but I'm just going to touch on the things that are important to note right now. These sunspot regions, 4274 and 4275, and then there's another one that's going to start to rotate into the Earth-facing side of the sun. Eventually, 4276 potentially could be named that. These are some active sunspots, and they're likely going to contribute to some solar flares. So they've already contributed to two X-class solar flares. You can see on this solar flare graph, you can see this active region right here on the sun. This is what's rotating towards Earth at this current moment, and what they're going to do is they're going to pass from the east limb, so this side, over to the west limb. They'll enter the Earth strike zone, and there's a chance, not a guarantee, but there's a chance that if they release a good solar flare, such as an high M class or X class flare, could produce a CME, and if that CME is oriented properly, then it could potentially provide potential for some halfway decent aurora, which again, we love to see aurora during this active period in the solar cycle, so we're going to keep checks on that particular situation. Here's the 1.8 solar flare that occurred, the X-class, and then right here is that X-class 1.1 from that solar flare that is now rotating towards the Earth strike zone. So we'll see exactly how that's going to pan out, but just wanted to keep your ear to the ground. There is some potential for aurora coming up with these the sunspot regions that are coming through. But again, that's one of the S words we're talking about. We're talking about the other S word too, known as snow. So again, everybody, I'm sure there's plenty of people that are kind of excited and anticipating the idea of snow coming into the Great Lakes once again. And yes, it is going to be here. There is at least there will likely be some snow. Accumulation-wise, it's going to be tough. And there's a halfway decent reason for that. But first of all, let's take a look at what is going on in the atmosphere that will contribute to this event, this snow event. So first of all, we have a nice ridge that's kind of settled over the continent of the United States. Again, that ridging it kind of enables us to have some warmer air at the surface, and that's going to contribute to warmer weather. Now, watch what happens as we go a little bit forward into the time scale. Okay, this is Thursday, November 6th. You can still see not really too much happening in terms of changes until we get to Friday the 7th. Friday the 7th, you start to see a transition as a trough starts to make its way into portions of the Great Lakes region. And again, troughs are usually associated with sinking air. Okay, so high pressure at the ground, low pressure at the top. The high pressure, that sinking air is going to contribute to colder temperatures. Okay, so those colder temperatures are actually coming from much further up north. You see this little area right here on the map? Watch what happens as we progress it a little bit forward. And you can see what, as this trough makes its way through in a series of a couple troughs, this deep trough to the north actually settles into the continent of the United States and deepens quite significantly. So that's going to welcome in quite a bit of cold air and maybe even the potential for some wintry weather and some showers and thunderstorms likely probably further to the south in the southern fringe of this. I don't know if we're really seeing a decent potential for severe weather in this case. I don't really see that on the latest models, but especially not for the Great Lakes region. That's probably not going to happen. But you can see how deep this trough gets, quite significantly deep across much of the eastern continent of the United States. And this is just the beginning of, this is late fall, early winter, and we're already seeing something like this. So I wonder if it's going to beat the fact that we'd see something like this in January when it's like -20. Ugh. Yeah, those are quite the experiences, right? But this drop's going to make its way through, and that's going to affect our weather. Let's continue with this a little bit more, see how it plays out on radar. And again, with weather models aren't always going to show exactly what's going to happen. There's likely going to be changes, and this is very important to remember, especially when we look at the snowfall totals, because there's some explanation that we'll need with regards to how that's going to unfold as well. So progressing forward, you see this low pressure system associated with this initial trough making its way in, and then you can see that there's some rainfall out ahead of it on Friday, Friday morning actually, for about I'd say 1 a.m. at this time. Okay, progressing it forward, you can see the rain moves through, and then you can see that this trough to the north starts to make its way south. New low pressure system begins to develop, and look on the northern fringe of this. Do you see that snow that's starting to show up? Maybe even a little bit of system snow. That will be a wet snow in nature that will make its way through. Then on the backside, that cold blast of Arctic air makes its way in. And depending on how our winds orient themselves, whether it's going to be a northern to southern flow or a northwestern to southeast flow, that will contribute to the lake effect snow machine kicking up across portions of the Great Lakes. And look at this. The Euro is actually going a little bit intense with the snow potential and even kicking it as far south as southern Ohio. Will that happen? Well, it's tough to determine at this point, but this is a pretty impressive trough, a pretty impressive blast of cold air for this time of the year. So I'm rather impressed by what the Euro's showing with regards to this. And comparing it to the GFS real quick, just to get an idea of what the comparison here is. So you see, it's kind of following similar suit. You have a cold blast, but the cold blast on the GFS definitely does not make it as far south. You can see it really only settles across portions of West Virginia. And then the lake effect snow does continue in Michigan. So again, there's a more northern play with regards to this system as well. But both models do show the potential for snow. And how much snow? Again, we can't really tell. I do think it's going to be low end in most places. There might be some places that see, like our common lake effect snow places that see more decent snow. It's not going to be much even there though, because again, we got a bunch of variables considered with that as well. So let's look at, again, same with the winter outlook from the winter outlook from the Weather Prediction Center here. They are not really forecasting a lot of snow for this with this system or with anything that kind of occurs across the Great Lakes region. You can see that the Upper Peninsula will have some lake effect on Monday. I think this area will have lake effect too. Will it stick though? That's the question. As we get into Tuesday, November 11th, you can see that also portions of Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, also kind of seeing that potential for some lake effect snow. Now, this little graphic shows a 10 to 30% probability of snow and sleet exceeding the 2.25 inch liquid equivalent, which depending on a number of variables usually contributes to about 2.5 inches of snow. So that's kind of what is being, that's what's kind of being alluded to here. But again, that is probability of snow sleet, not necessarily accumulation. So let's break down our accumulation potential here real quick. Let's get to a more regional graphic. There you go. So progressing it forward, there's your initial batch of rain, maybe a few thunderstorms embedded in there, especially in portions of Illinois. I don't expect those storms to really do too much at this current time. Pressing forward, notice this heavy band of snow that kind of starts to form across portions of southern Michigan. And again, the chances that it stays all rain, but there's some models that are hinting at the potential for snow. And you can see what we have in this case. We have temperatures in the 30s at the ground level, and as it rises, you can see it gradually cools. And it's pretty heavily saturated, but very close to at freezing or just below freezing. So again, that snow, that will allow the potential for some of that snow to reach the ground, and hence, and could be some fast snowfall rates in this initial band here early Sunday morning. So we'll see how that pans out. And then on the back side of that, what do you notice? You start to see the lake effect snow machine really ramp up. And usually early in the season is when you see your biggest lake effect snow events. Why? Because the water temperatures at the lakeshore are quite warm, right? So let's take a look. Again, if you take a sounding out from one of these snow bands here amongst the lake effect snow, one thing you need for lake effect snow development is a 23-degree temperature difference between the surface of the earth and more elevated levels. And I'm pretty sure what you're seeing here, and that's in Fahrenheit, by the way, and I'm pretty sure that is likely going to be the case. As the air rises, you can see the temperatures cool rather quickly, and the air is rather saturated, okay? Notice also there's a little bit of instability in the atmosphere, okay? Instability can contribute to a weak potential for maybe even a little bit of thunder snow, and usually it can likely occur this time of year. But with this being the first lake effect snow event of the year, I do think we will have some interesting, well, it'll be a rather interesting setup for lake effect snow. There's still a lot to play out with this. We're still over, we're still a few days out from this event, which is the reason why we should definitely expect some changes with regards to this setup. I need to go back to a previous model in order to get a better guesstimate. Guesstimate is the term here with regards to the snow that might fall across this region. So let's do a quick snowfall accumulation rating. Again, definitely do not take this at face value. When it says 6 inches of snow in this portion of Michigan, we have to keep in mind that that's snowfall, not accumulation. Okay, and at the same time, I do think the euro might be a little bit high end on this stuff, mainly because, first of all, the ground level. Consider the ground. The ground at this current moment is above freezing. It has not frozen over just yet because it's been kind of warm, right? We're just getting out of fall. We're starting to get into the winter season, okay? So that's going to contribute to snow not really sticking as well to the ground, and I really don't think there's going to be, for much of Michigan, some places might get some snow that you can shovel, but most places, particularly in southern Michigan, will not see enough to amount to that. And again, if you look at the depth change graphic with this, you can see that it's a much better depiction of how much snow might actually accumulate. And I think when it accumulates, it'll likely accumulate on more grassy surfaces, likely not on paved roadways or things like that, because again, snow is likely going to melt. If it falls at a fast enough rate, it can stick and then it can turn into slush and get slick. So if you're in those lake effect snow bands, you definitely want to be aware of that. But where it's not as concentrated, where it's lighter, that's going to contribute to kind of a lesser chance of seeing it stick to the roads. So again, I really don't think it's going to cause too much in terms of travel impacts, but again, it's the first snow. Got to get a little bit excited about it, right? Let's compare the models with regards to this setup too. So here's the GDPS. GDPS going way out of the water for this, and again, that's why we want to be very cautious as to what is being told. Now, the blend of models for the National Weather Service does point a picture of some heavier snow closer to the lakeshore, and the likelihood is on Monday I am going to be chasing, believe it or not, because again, first snow, it's tradition. I always go and check out the first snow when it comes through. So I'd like to stick to that tradition too. But we'll be out there keeping track on it. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But this is kind of just the general update I wanted to give. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. I also appreciate all of your guys' prayers and support with regards to the past Surveillance Purse trips we've taken. The last one, mid-October, was great. Good opportunities there to just reach into people's lives by helping them with some flood damage, especially before this winter season hits. Samaritan's Purse has wrapped up their work there. They're now pursuing work in Jamaica and also in southwest Colorado. We have some people out there as well doing stuff out there. So maybe we'll send in some updates with regards to that. But thanks for watching, everybody. Good to hear from y'all, and we'll see you all later.